So today we're gonna speak about the recent events around the Strait of Hormuz and the blockade decided by President Trump and what it means for the global markets. So first of all, as you can see, the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most strategically important waterways on the planet. About one-fifth or so of the global oil supply and a significant share of global energy, so liquefied gas, flows through this narrow corridor between Iran here in the north and then Oman in the south. So it's really narrow. And when this artery is blocked, or even the risk of being blocked, then obviously there are shockwaves spread instantly across the global markets and energy systems. So today we'll try to explore why this blockade happened and how it will affect global economics and oil price. So first, beginning with why the blockade happened. As you probably know, if you watched the news lately, there were a lot of recent escalations between the United States and Iran, followed the collapse of a ceasefire and the nuclear related negotiations. And Donald Trump announced a naval blockade very strongly. We're gonna very strongly naval blockade this strait, targeting ships entering or leaving the strait. And he particularly threatened the one paying transit fees to Iran because, yeah, for Iran, this has been pretty lucrative. So they thought of a way to make some money by taxing the ships that go through there. And as I said, there's a lot of them. So Iran responded by closing the strait and warning that any vessels attempting passage would be targeted. This transformed the diplomatic standoff into a full scale disruption of global energy flows. So, the blockade is not just a military maneuver, it's also a form of economic warfare, with both sides attempting to leverage the strait's importance to pressure the other. The immediate energy market shock. So let's talk a bit about that. Obviously, it's weekend today, so the markets are closed. But we'll probably expect some big bumps tomorrow. The strait's closure removes up to 20 million barrels of oil per day, and that's close to 200 to 20% of the global consumption. So let's say the global consumption is about 100 million barrels of oil per day, and 20 million, about a fifth, come through this strait. You can see from the Persian Gulf. Then obviously it's a fifth less oil. We could say that this is unprecedented, and for comparison, if we look at the earlier oil shocks in 1973, 1979, 1990s, they only remove about 4, 5, 6% at most of the oil supply. But today it's about 3 to 4 times larger. So definitely the consequences includes the oil prices skyrocketing, the liquefied natural gas shortages, especially from Qatar, which halted the production from because of the drone strikes. So Iran has been hitting a few places around the neighboring countries just to, yeah, create chaos there. And obviously, we're also talking about a global trade disruption. So this, as the strait is practically closed with the oil tankers not risking passage because they could hit a mine, they could be hit by a missile. Um, with ship transit collapsing from about 100 plus per day to just maybe 6, it's basically more than 90% drop. So almost no tankers are leaving the area, except for the ones that are from countries that Iran considers friendly. But most of them are just stuck in this area, so in the Gulf. So this affects oil and gas shipments, container traffic, air cargo, port logistics worldwide, you name it. There's a lot of problems with this missing oil. So obviously, inflation will also rise as the fuel and transport costs ripple through the supply chains, raising the price of everything from food to manufactured goods. If we think about what countries will be hit the hardest, we're thinking about Asia, which is the epicenter of shock. So the main importers from the countries inside the Persian Gulf, because you see there are some countries here that they are exporting oils through these maritime sea terminals here, and then the tankers would leave and pass through. They used to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, not any longer, and then go different ways. So countries like Japan, India, South Korea, Thailand, Philippines rely heavily on Gulf oil. They will face immediately supply shortages and soaring energy costs. Then you have Pakistan and Bangladesh, which are especially vulnerable due to the limited liquefied natural gas, energy storage, and procurement flexibility. And this also explains a bit why Pakistan was so keen on um, facilitating negotiations between Donald Trump and the Iranian regime. Pakistan would be a huge benefiter of the oil and especially the gas continuing to flow. Um, Then, of course, there are the Middle Eastern producers, and ironically, even US allies, such as the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, will suffer economically because their exports depend very much on this route and now blocked, and their economy relies heavily on exporting oil. So that will be a problem. And obviously, Africa and South Asia. So countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Mauritania, India faces disruptions to more than maybe 10% or even more of their total imports that were coming through these tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. If we look at the, let's say, sector by sector economic impact, there are obviously a lot of sectors impacted by this blockade, and it will affect far more than just energy, to be honest. So it will affect manufacturing. We're thinking maybe of higher input costs and supply delays. We're thinking about transport and logistics, so the rising fuel and insurance costs, and even traveling by plane. So there are a lot of airlines that are at risk now with the kerosene price rising, and mm, yeah, some of them even canceling flights. The consumer goods, obviously, so there will be rising inflation, and this will reduce demand because when prices go up and the salaries stay the same, there's no way but just to cut spending. Then the finance sector, because investors will pull back, and here we are also concerned about and trying to maybe see if the oil price will go up and try to trade a bit on that and make some money. And of course, the government budgets. So, especially the countries in debt, they will have higher borrowing costs and reduced fiscal space. So, we need to look at this as a multi layered economic crisis and not as a single sector shock. So, in closing, I would say that the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is just a reminder of how interconnected and in the same time fragile the global economy is. Just a 39 kilometers waterway wide can determine the price of fuel in uh, in Tokyo, in Africa, the inflation rates across Europe. And as long as the strait remains blocked or stable, with the American Navy also threatening the blockade, the world faces a prolonged period of energy insecurity, inflation, and geopolitical uncertainty. I hope you found this short presentation helpful. So, thank you, guys.